Sit comfortably, either in Vajrasana or in Sukhasana. Keep your spine erect. Eyes gently closed. Shift your eye gaze to the Jyotishmati, at the center of the eyebrows, the light of awareness within. We'll begin today's session with an opening chant. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We seek blessings to be nourished together. We seek blessings to make sure that we're able to give our 100% effort in today's perception. We make sure that there is no competition or hatred amongst us, and let there be peace everywhere. To begin our study of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, let's offer our salutations to Maharshi Patanjali. Yogena chittasya padena vacha malam shariram cha vaidyakena Vyopakarotam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. For this great sage Maharshi Patanjali, who gave us the yoga system to make our mind into a tranquil state, who gave us the speech for the language, who gave the grammar for Sanskrit, but also gave Ayurveda to keep our body in optimal health condition. For that, Maharshi Patanjali, let's offer salutations. So it looks like today is more of a family session. I have my cousin and my cousin's roommate, and then of course Sunilji, who lives in our neighborhood. So it's perhaps a more intimate session. So let's what we're going to do today is we're going to do a quick recap on the Niyama limb, the second limb that we started yesterday, and then we're going to finish the rest of the four the principles of Niyama, which is the good self-conduct. And then depending on the discussion and how long we have, we'll also do some meditation, which anchors to one of the strategies that Patanjali revealed to us to restrain our mind. So let's do that. Before we do that, are there any questions, comments from what we covered last week? Surabhiji, I know you usually would have something at that.
No, I really do not have anything. I think we discussed a lot last time, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So what we're going to do is let's quickly move on to the Ashtanga Yoga. We already covered the Ashtanga Yoga, and then the 8 limbs: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. And then we started with the Yama principles, the Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Parigraha, and the superpowers that we can realize being a human. It's actually great to be a human. It's just that we don't realize our true powers within. So now, again, practicing these yamas will start, giving us the realization of the true powers. And then what we wanted to focus on is the niyama. Niyama is, again, yama means control. The first one is how do we control our behaviors when we interact with people around us and the environment around us. And then the next one is how do we control our behaviors when we conduct ourselves. This is the self-control. So there are 5 principles of the niyamas. One, they are Saucha, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidanani, or the 5 niyamas. Saucha, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidana. And then what we covered is the first one that we covered is Saucha. Saucha is cleanliness. The cleanliness within our body and the cleanliness within our mind, making sure that we don't keep any impurities within our body, and to make sure that there is no impurities in our mind, and also the environment, like the home or the workplace where we are, that there is no clutter. And then Patanjali revealed the 2 bhavas that we're going to get. The first one is Sauchat Swanga Jupupsa Prati Asangargaha. What it actually means is, we actually become transcend. We become the requirement to transcend our body. We don't get attached to any of the ailments or the uncomfortableness of the body, and we also move to the process of bhava pratyayo videhi prakritilayana. In other words, we basically become less and less conscious of our body. The more we are conscious of the body, it prevents us to focus our mind into that meditative state. Most of the time, we are always worried about, either taking care of the body or, either whether it is, attending to an illness or into some kind of, discomfort, whether it is, whether it could be weight, cholesterol, or what are the other things. So by maintaining the cleanliness, we basically become less and less aware of the comforts of the body so that we can elevate our consciousness or awareness to the higher levels. And then Patanjali also revealed the 4 other powers that we're going to get, which is, practicing this saucha, the cleanliness, will give you sattva shuddhi. Sattva shuddhi actually becomes the clarity of the thought. And then indriya jaya means, we will actually get control over our senses. And then what we also get is ekagrata, which is like we build more and more one-pointedness. Because if you're not in the cleanliness, we're always trying to cover it up, mask it. So it actually, your body and the mind get in the way of ekatattva abhyasaha, building more one-pointedness. And the last one is atma darshana, atma-darshanacha. So we become a prerequisite. It doesn't actually, saucha doesn't actually get you there, but actually saucha becomes a prerequisite. It makes you qualify so that, you can actually get more closer to the self-realization, atma-darshana. So that's the first one that we talked about. And then the next one is, just one second. The next one is sorry. Is santosha. Santosha is very simple. Santosha means being content with what we have. Santoshat anuttama sukhalabhaha. What it actually means is we actually get unlimited happiness. That universe is going to give you the unlimited happiness. Anuttama sukhalabhaha. Okay. So this contentment, the lack of, the getting rid of this thought of, I don't have enough, I have a sense of scarcity, right? The lack of something, but being content with what we have. It doesn't mean that you stay in some kind of a status quo. And in fact, the next niyama actually, talks about that. Don't get settled into an uncomfortable status quo. Like, for example, if your body is an uncomfortable situation, we cannot be comfortably unhappy. That is not what santosha is. It is like, with what we have, being, expressing a sense of gratitude, santosha, being content, and not having a sense of, scarcity, then anuttama sukhalabhaha, then that is the secret to having unbounded joy. I think, this is perhaps, very, very straightforward. And then the next 3 are tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. So these are the 3 niyamas that we are going to cover. And what we'll also do is we'll cover one more session after we do the Astavangani. After we cover the 8 limbs, we actually cover the Kriya Yoga, the one of the 3 streams of Patanjali yoga system. We cover that in depth. And this is a very, very important topic. In fact, what Patanjali defined is, he defined 3 levels of approaching the yoga system. The first one is Kriya Yoga, which is like a yoga of action. It's also referred to the Karma Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. That is for the beginners, because most of the time we are engaged in this world, and then we are always acting. We are always expressing our life in terms of acting, either at work or at home. We are always busy with action. So that is the beginner's approach to the yoga. And then the second one is Ashtanga Yoga. This is perhaps the comprehensive 8-limb yoga system. And this tapas, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhanam, these three together is actually one small tiny part of it. The Ashtanga yoga is very comprehensive system. And then the third one is for the advanced people, which is the Samadhi yoga, so Samadhi Pada, the first chapter, which is like, directly start working on your mind and then get into that enlightenment state. You don't really need to work on the yama, niyama, asana, and that stuff, because you're already established, you already have the deeper mind control, so you can actually get into that Samadhi stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a separate topic on the Kriya Yoga, and then we'll look at all the different types of actions and so on and so forth. So the first one is tapas. The tapas is, let me stop sharing a little bit. So tapas is what it actually means is, it's very simply putting intense effort, and in fact, intense effort. Whatever, and in English, tapas also means heating the system. So when we are doing any work, we have to give our intense effort. So put yourself in uncomfortable situations to do the right thing. So it's not just about putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, but putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation to do the right thing. And this tapas actually has many different dimensions to it. Like, for example, tapas for our body, to make sure that our body is in a healthy and optimal condition, we have to do exercise or yoga. We have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situation. That's the only way we're going to succeed. And then tapas of walk, Vangmaya tapas, which is like the tapas of speech, where we need to have, number one, the restrainment, but make sure that we're only focused on, the right expression of the words, the Vangmaya tapas. And then Manotapasu is also, it's about meditation. Meditation is not easy. There is your mind is scattered on all the different directions, but the fact that we make a commitment to sit at one place and then trying to make this effort, there's also tapas. So tapas is about the heating the system. And of course, only when you heat it, you actually rid of all the toxins. Like, even the food, we heat it to make sure that there is no bacteria and so on and so forth. Similarly, we need to make sure that we have to continuously put ourselves in the uncomfortable situation to get to the right results. So that is tapas. And one of the benefits of the tapas is, of course, your sensory perceptions, your body and your sensory perceptions, they get amplified with their abilities. You're actually making them more and more capable in terms of, doing their work. And tapas is an essential element. And then that has three dimensions to it, which is the body, the walk, and then the mind. And this is very, very important. And that's the reason why we have to make it a habit to wake up every day in the morning, like, whether it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, even though that's uncomfortable. But we just have to bring ourselves into that tapas and the discipline to keep our body in the thing. And then, we need to do pranayama, we need to do meditation to keep our mind in control, even though it looks very difficult. And then the walk tapas, which is Vangmaya tapas, which is like, make sure that we're always striving to utter the right words. In fact, in Rudram that says, Tena nepyayasva, which is like we seek blessings to make sure that every word that comes out of our mouth is like a honey. And again, our actions also like honey. Right? That is tapas. Any questions, comments on the tapas? And then let me cover the other one. Actually, the tapas and swadhyaya, and in fact, Ishwara pranidhanam, the combo go together. The tapas, and then the next niyama principle is swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means self-study. And that has two different dimensions. One is, being constantly studying your efforts. As you are putting that intense effort, the tapas, we always have to be constantly evaluating to make sure that is the right tapas. That's the right tapas. We are always in the process of self-reflection, studying ourselves, studying our actions, studying our words, studying our thoughts, and then constantly calibrating to make sure that they are in the brahmacharya, that we are in the path of, we are moving towards that, the mahan, bruhat, kind of a thought. That is self-study. So that is the constant evaluation, self-reflection, and making sure that your tapas is in the right path, or the right means. And then the second dimension is study of self, which is the real identity. Who we are is nothing but the tadadrashtu swarupe, that nitya suchi sukha atma. The contemplation of the self is also swadhyaya, right? And so how do we define the self-study? Like, for example, and one of the important things with the swadhyaya is to make sure that we are not overheating the system. Like, for example, you take an example of a gym, right? Somebody says that, you have to go to the gym and lift weights, to make sure that, you have the right strength and so on and so forth. And, for that, there is a standard, routine, which is like, you have to work on, your upper body and the legs, and, for not more than once a week or something like that. But if somebody were to think that, oh, instead of working for one day, maybe let me work on my upper body for, 5 times a week. And then what happens is, instead of actually giving you the optimum results, what happens is it actually overheats the system. It actually results in injuries, and it actually results in negative effects. And in fact, that also goes back to against yama, which is one of the yama principles is non-violence, ahimsa. So when the swadhyaya is not guarding your tapas, you are actually moving into non-yama principles, like, you're causing violence towards you. And then the second thing is, you always have to guard against, number one, not overheating the system. And we also have to make sure that our means are right. Like, for example, during the exams times, kids would want to work, day and night, right? And then, they would have to literally, one way to do that is maybe perhaps, they can use pranayama, they can do some yoga, and then, so that they can improve their concentration and meditation, so that they can stay focused. Or the other means is, now more and more kids are actually resulting in using this caffeine drink. So, I even hear people are taking attention disorder kind of, tablets or monster-like drinks, or more and more caffeine or other kinds of, substances to put the intense effort. That is also putting themselves in an uncomfortable situation to get to the mean, to get to an outcome. But that is not the right path. So that is also not the correct swadhyaya. Right? So tapas and swadhyaya, they always go together. And then one of the benefits that what Patanjali defined with swadhyaya is, when you engage in more self-study, self-calibration, then you will be in union with your Ishtadevata. You will be in union with your Ishtadevata. And in fact, our sensories, for example, all our sensory perceptions are connected to one of the angels or one of the gods. Like, for example, our eyesight is connected to the sun god, or our speech is connected to the fire, Agni. And then our motion, the locomotion, our ability to move is connected to the Vishnu. So by practicing this self-study of your actions, what you're able to do is you're able to communicate more and more, communicate and connect and be in union with your Ishtadevata, so that your those abilities will also get magnified, and you're almost like you're getting the full potential of them. So that is also one of the things that Patanjali revealed as a superpower. So the more you're doing self-study of what you're watching, what's your sangat, and how you're communicating and what you're doing, you are a lot more in union with the sun and the fire and Vishnu and there are different the angels that are connected to all the abilities that we have, and then the Swadhyaya actually helps us with that union. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Does it make sense? Does Swadhyaya make sense?
Yes, Srini. I mean, when we are actually observing ourselves, then we actually understand like where we are and how we are able to get to the right place. So if we don't know where we stand, then how we'll find out where we want to go.
Yeah. I think, the greatest people that I've seen is they're always constantly more aware of themselves. In other words, where they are right, where they are not wrong, they're always engaged in self-reflection, right? Not in a way to beat them up, but rather they're always calibrating themselves. They have a full awareness of where they are right, where they are wrong, and then just admit that, and then they basically correct themselves to again go on the journey, right? So that is something that is essential for every yogi. And in fact, most of the time what happens is we basically anchor ourselves on external feedback, or whether it is you get an A or you get the top in your class. That's a sense of validation. We're always looking for validation. But the one of the things that what this niyama is saying is the Swadhyaya, you're always anchored on yourself. You don't need an external feedback. It doesn't mean that you completely ignore all the external feedback, but take that feedback, but don't make your actions, your thoughts and your action be rooted in other people's kind of an endorsement and entitlement, right? We are always standing firmly on ourselves. And I think, all our actions, tapas is extremely important, and then balance it with the Swadhyaya. And then the last one is Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana is maintaining that sense of surrender. Okay. Sense of surrender is also an important thing where we are surrendering all our actions, the tapas and the Swadhyaya, and ultimate surrender. This is also the bhakti. Bhakti is we need to maintain that the sense of devotion for what we are actually doing, that we are not entitled to the fruits of our action, the effort that you're doing. Like, for example, we put a lot of tapas in trying to do yoga and meditation, but if you are doing this to make sure that you're building the best body, or you're going to do the perfect back bend, or if you're anchoring your actions in the pursuit of an outcome, then that's the wrong way of doing the effort. So surrendering to the Ishvara with ultimate devotion. And in fact, this devotion is not just about the Ishvara, it's about surrendering to every action that you're doing. Like, karmanyevadikaraste mafaleshu kadachana. That's in the sense of Ishvara Pranidhana, which is that having a devotional attitude in the action, in the work that you're doing, but not on the outcome. And in fact, Ishvara Pranidhana is called Bhakti Vishesha, or it's actually one of the highest form of devotion. So, and again, these three together or form the Kriya Yoga, which we're going to cover in all the different types of tapas, and then the different types of Swadhyaya, and then the different types of Ishvara Pranidhana in as a separate topic in the Kriya Yoga. But maintaining a sense of surrender to the devotion to the divine, and also surrendering to the whatever the work that you are actually doing. So be immersed in it is one of the niyama principles. So, and again, doing a quick recap on the niyama principles. Number one is Saucha, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana. These things have nothing to do with external people or external entities. This is how we conduct ourselves. Whereas Yama is all about how do we interact with the nature around us, whether it's the people or the environment. The second one, Niyama, is about how we conduct ourselves. This is about our state of being, which is keeping ourselves, clean in our body and mind, keeping ourselves, fully content and being happy, making sure that we are always giving our 100% or 120% effort. In fact, putting yourself outside of the comfort zone. And that's what Mihaly says. We get this continuous state of joy when we are constantly engaged in activity where we are working about 20% above than the skills that we have. So what that means is that is putting yourself outside of the comfort zone. That is what is tapas. And he realized that he studied a lot of people who are in that flow state experience that bliss. And that is literally what anchors into this Kriya Yoga. So like as an example, when we are like, for example, if you're doing a sun salutation, so when you're doing the back bend, you need to engage the capacity that you have and then go the 10 to 20% extra distance. And if you go beyond the 20%, then you get overwhelmed, then you break the system. And that's where the Swadhyaya, you're not following the Swadhyaya. And that's what Mihaly actually concluded in his research of the flow theory, where even at work, the way we need to keep our employees engaged is align their work so that they can always push themselves about 10 to 20% more than the skills that they have. If they are engaged in a work that is less engaging than the skills that they have, then they will get into boredom, and then they'll get unhappiness and all kinds of other stuff. And if you also put them on a task that is beyond their abilities, then they will get overwhelmed, and then that also leads to unhappy behaviors and unhealthy behaviors in the workplace. So the tapas, about that 10 to 20%, and Swadhyaya, again, keeping that Swadhyaya is making sure that you're using the right means and for the right one. And the last one is Ishvara Pranidhana. You're only doing this as a devotion in the service of that action or in the service of that object, but not for self-gratification. So we need to question ourselves. Why am I doing this work, tapas? Is it for meeting my selfish needs or to take care of myself, or is in the service of others, or the service of the divine? And that's all we are entitled for, not the outcomes. So that those three are the niyama. So that's kind of a quick overview of the niyama principles. And then I would want to, if you have any thoughts, Sunilji or Ramakantji or any of you, if you want to share your thoughts on the niyama principles, then we can have a discussion. Otherwise, what I would want to do is talk about one of the techniques and then lead into some meditation.
One quick question I have, and this is about the, like you mentioned, this is the Kriya Yoga, right? And this is also the niyama principles. So, I mean, so Ashtanga Yoga is part of the niyama?
Exactly. Ashtanga Yoga is the 8 limbs yoga: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama.
Oh, yeah.
So it's basically like, the comprehensive system. In fact, that's also called as Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga means, it comes from the Sanskrit word Rajra, means Mahan. It is like, the light. Actually, Raja means light, which is like, it is the comprehensive system. And Raja also means royal. And in that, Kriya Yoga is for the beginners, because for all of us, because we are involved in the daily world where we have to work and take care of our daily duties. So the Kriya Yoga is for the beginners. That's the first level. And then Ashtanga Yoga is the more comprehensive stuff. And then Samadhi Yoga or the Samadhi Pada is for the advanced practitioners who are already have a mind control. And for that, they move into that Samadhi or Samyama state. It's all about, and even that is also covered in the Ashtanga Yoga, the last 3 limbs, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So people who are already established in, the full mind control, they can directly go into dhyana and samadhi. And then there are many levels of samadhi that you can actually explore. And in your deeper union, and eventually what happens is tatparam purushakyate guna vaitrushyam, where we actually transcend all the qualities, all the gunas, even sattva. And then we become the Vishesha Purusha or the Brahman, right? We become Nirguna, Nirvikara or something like that. So, but the Samadhi Pada is for those advanced practitioners. The Kriya Yoga is for the beginner practitioners. And then the Ashtanga Yoga is the comprehensive system. That is what we're all building. And then eventually, as we purify our body and the mind, we move into only the third one, Samadhi Pada, where our mind is totally in our control. That is Samyama state, where our mind does not involuntarily produce any thought. We basically just go plan the thought that we want, and then we just go accomplish it without any residue. I think that's kind of a very advanced state. I think for my lifetime, with this costume, I think if I could succeed in the Kriya Yoga, I think that's a great victory, and then grow some of the other limbs. I think that's kind of my state of being. Did that answer your question, Surabhi?
Anji. So you said there are 3 levels of yoga. First is Kriya Yoga, second is Ashtanga Yoga, and third is Samadhi Yoga.
Yeah.
And the fourth one that you said is where like one is the thoughts are not coming into the mind. So what is that again?
No, that is Samyama. That is actually the Samadhi state. And in fact, the Samadhi, the advanced practitioners is also covered in the Ashtanga Yoga. That the last 3 limbs.
That's the ultimate limb.
Right?
Okay.
So Ashtanga Yoga is kind of the comprehensive system, the holistic system. Okay. And then for the beginners, we start with Kriya Yoga and then start building other limbs and growing other things. And then for advanced practitioners, for example, for the saints, you don't even see them doing any asanas, or you don't need to teach them yama niyama principles because they're already established there.
Right.
And then they're already there. So all they would have to do is continue to go deeper in their mind control, the samadhi state, so that they're reaching and greater elevated levels of awareness to become that pure consciousness.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Ramakantji, anything that you want to add?
Yeah. Actually, I'm outside, just listening. No, I think we are doing fantastic.
Excellent. So what I would want to do is, there is one Yoga Sutra, we covered last time. We are in one of the sessions where we talked about obstacles in our practice. And then Patanjali revealed about 9 different strategies on how to overcome those obstacles and then get into the tranquil state. And one of them is Vishayavativa Pravrittirutpanna Manasa Nibandhanaha. What it means is, we can actually, even though the senses, the sensory organs, or the distractions are the source of the vrittis in the mind, what Patanjali said is, he actually gave an insight where you can actually use the sensory organs to actually bring your mind into a state of the present moment. You can actually use the sensory organs to actually bring your mind into the centeredness. For that, what he basically said is, for that, Vishayavativa Pravrittirutpanna means like, mind at any point in time, it's constantly processing all the sensory images and also the inherent thoughts. So it's like a multitasking on so many different things, right? What Patanjali said is, when your mind is distracted, when it is scattered across many different dimensions, what he basically said is, shift your attention to any one sensory perception, Vishayavativa. So just highlight on whether it's the hearing, whether it's the touch, whether it is the smell, focus on any one and then go deeper in it, and then go try to get ekatattva abhyasaha, go one-pointedness in trying to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and in your awareness of that one sensory perception. Vishayavativa pravrittirutpanna, when you become oneness with that one sensory perception, manasa nibandhanaha. So that technique can also bring your mind from the scatteredness to that oneness. As an example, there are some things like, for example, if you are in kind of an anxiety or a lot of different things, like for example, you can actually hold on to an ice, the really cold stuff. Then what happens is your mind suddenly shifts away from all the other things that are happening, and then it only heightens that sensory perception of a touch, right? And the other big thing is, when we are in the real world, our eyes dominate most of the time. The visual expression dominates all other things. Like even when you are watching a movie, what happens is, even though we listen to the music and the dialogues and so on and so forth, the visual image or the visual sensory perception dominates all the other things. We perhaps we don't even remember any of the lyrics, or we don't remember as much of the background music. But if you actually go back and just listen to that movie without the visual, then you connect to the emotions much better. You actually connect to the background music and the subtleties of the movie, and so on and so forth. And in fact, in some of the meditations, what we actually do is, we call this as a hearing meditation, where in Yoga Nidra, you'll practice this a lot more, where you close your eyes and then you put a beautiful music with different types of sounds, whether this is a Tibetan bell or some background, the birds chirping, some waterfalls, and then some music that's happening. And what they train you to do is literally scan like a radar of all the sounds that are actually happening. So your job in that meditation and the mindfulness practice is to scan for all the subtle sounds that are there, and then be oneness with that sound. But with a sound, don't let your mind follow that sound. Like, what is this bird? Is this bird this, and so on and so forth. It basically says that, become oneness with that sound. Similarly, when you're watching something, if it's a flower, try to go one-pointedness with that flower. Go explore all the layers of what the flower and all the subtleties that are there. So that is one of the techniques that Patanjali said. And in fact, there is a myth that a lot of people have about people that are on the yoga path, that they're not connected to the sensibilities, they're intolerant to all the emotions, they are kind of very passive. No, what Patanjali says is, people that are on the yoga path, who are practicing the yoga, they become at most sensitive. Their sensibilities and the sensitiveness to every emotion and every detail that's around them, they become a lot more connected to it. That's what it basically says. Paramanu paramamahatva vashikara sangya is yoga. And what it means is, we then become tuned to the finest and the subtlest of the detail, the atom and subatom level, in every level of detail, to paramamahatva, to this the Mahan, the knowledge, the entire universe. We will be able to, our perception is enhanced to observe all the subtleties to the entire cosmos, and that knowledge will be upon us on the yoga practice. So with that, what I would want us to do is, I'm going to put one track, and our goal is to, today we'll focus on, this is a Om meditation track. Let's actually use our hearing perception and see if we can go become practice oneness with all the sounds that are there, and then be in oneness with all the subtleties and the Parama Mahatva, the Mahatva of the Om. Any questions on this? Did we practice this before, or did we? I think some of you were there in that yoga session, Yoga Sutra session. Surbhiji, were you there? Or do you practice this in your meditation? the hearing being oneness with your hearing?
I do not do it very consciously, but if I'm listening to that, then of course, I don't know how to explain it. It's oneness or what to say.
So I think, why don't we just make it as an attempt? I mean, I think, this is what, in fact, if you watch some of the tracks from Bihar School of Yoga about their Yoga Nidra, they actually guide you through connect with the sounds that are outside the room in the farthest distance. And then they will again then bring your attention back to the sounds that are within the room. And then the sounds then that are from within your body. So you can actually shift your awareness to just the sense of hearing, and then act like a radar and be oneness with all the sounds. And then eventually what happens is when you're doing the Om meditation, you can actually see the Om vibrating to you. And then once you connect with the Om within, that's when you become the Ishvara, or you become in union with the Ishvara.
All right. Okay.
Sunilji, anything that you want to add? Do you practice this in the meditation, the oneness with the sound, or any other emotions? Okay, sorry, we can't hear you, Sunilji. Okay. If not, what I'll do is I'll simply start the meditation. We'll probably meditate about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna guide you through Om chanting, and then we will close the session. Okay. You're okay.
It's very loud.
Very loud?
Yes, that's good
better?
now. Yeah.
Everybody gently close your eyes. Gently observe the sounds within your room. Shift your awareness to the sounds within your body. Let's chant Om 3 times. Take a deep breath for Om. We'll chant the final prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Rub our palms, generate the fire of knowledge. Up your eyes, transmit that knowledge in the heart to the eyes to give us the right vision. And slowly and gently with a bright smile, open your eyes. Thank you all for sharing this evening with me and for your satsang. And I just want to share one thing, which is every day, as I mentioned before, I listen to the same talks again and again from Sriram Sarvottamji. And again, today I was listening to this talk on Kriya Yoga and yamas and niyamas and every time I learn new things. And then I kind of realized that before I used to say that, I'll probably share about 10% of what Sriramji said. Now after listening to today, then I realized, is 10% is such an exaggeration. So, and Sriramji's knowledge on, from Ramayana to Vedas and Upanishads and the level of depth and covers into different things is just unbelievable. So, whatever I'm doing in this effort is actually part of my self-study. To be able to get into this session, it actually gives me time to refresh and listen, and by sharing it with you, I'm actually, this is part of Sadhvaya. So thank you so much for being part of this the group. It's helping each other as part of our journey to the path of in the path of yoga. Namaste all.
Thank you so much, Srinivas.
And we'll meet tomorrow morning for our yoga class, from 8 to 9. And then if some of you are interested, you can also join the Kriya Kit this evening. Yep. Thank you. Have a great time. We'll talk again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.